Okay, so everybody is curious and kind of watching on pins and needles about what's going to be happening with the real estate market. And so we're going to discuss what's happened in the last 7 days and give you an idea of what you can expect. My name is Sean Price. I'm with the Price and Price Group here at eXp Realty. And the market is in flux right now. It's an interesting situation. You can, if you're doing research or if you're listening to the news, on one hand, you're hearing that the market's about to crash. It's going to be as bad as 2008 or even worse. And on the other hand, you're hearing that the market is going to continue to appreciate, that there's too little inventory, and so the mechanics are not the same and it's not going to crash. So, what is the truth? Well, honestly, nobody knows. Everybody that is out there and they are projecting, they are just presenting their opinions. Nobody actually knows. So the best thing that you can do is you can look at indicators of what's going on currently in the market, what's happened in the past when interest rates have gone up, when a recession has occurred, and then just kind of go week by week and watch the market and see what's actually occurring and see if the mechanics are starting to show that there might be a decrease. So in this week's market report, I'm going to talk about what's happened in the last 7 days. It's actually in the last 14 days because we weren't here last week. I will tell you that the phone calls have almost doubled. The buyer phone calls have almost doubled this week, and there's a lot of buyer activity happening. So that's been my experience just from incoming phone calls. All right, so let's get to the graphs. So if you look at the graphs here, as always, you'll see buyer activity versus inventory. The orange line is buyer activity, and the blue line is inventory. So you'll see the buyer activity for the last 7 days was down 18%. If you go back, remember I wasn't here last week to do a market report. If you go back to last week, you'll see that there was a decrease in inventory last week right here. So buyer activity followed that decrease there. If you'll look at how it's been basically tracking, inventory and activity have been pretty much tracking each other. Well, what happened last week is inventory came down significantly and buyer activity only came down a little bit. So that gave us this bump into the stronger sellers market, this bump that happened right here, because there was a gap between buyer activity and inventory. So inventory this week actually increased by 24%. When you combine that with the fact that buyer activity was down 18%, that brings us back down into the buyer's market. So again, this is where the interest rate started hiking. So activity in the market has certainly softened and it's been hanging kind of in this neutral area. We had a pickup last week and we had a decrease this week. So this doesn't really tell us exactly what's going to happen, because if we said last week, oh my God, the market's going back into a strong seller's market, we're going back into the strength of what was happening over the summer, that would have been a mistake because it was a one market tick. Same thing if we look at what happened in the last 7 days and we say, oh my goodness, the market is dropping again and everything is about to crash. Okay, so that you can't really make it based on a 7-day window. So what you can do is you can look at the trend. So here we saw a trend of everything going up. Here we saw a trend of things kind of just being chaotic and neutral. And now we can see the trend of everything kind of coming down. That's when the interest rates first started going up. And now we've seen a trend of sitting in a fairly normal market. So these are the keys that we need to know right now. Now, if we see this line next week do another dip, then we'll have a conversation on that. But right now, we just know that we're trending right around that neutral market space. And we're actually starting to say, like I said, we're starting to see these phone calls pick up, and we're starting to see buyers realizing that prices aren't going to go down, and they're starting to come back in the market. I would say I've got a good list of maybe 25 to 30% of buyers right now that kind of pulled back and they're waiting until the fall. So if this trend continues and then those buyers all come back into the market in the fall, we're going to go right back into that strong seller's market. So just keep all this in mind as you're strategizing with what you're doing. On the next market report, I'll bring July's numbers in and we'll talk a little bit about the history of what's been going on. So we'll get more into this next week. And if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And we'll see you on next week's market report. Have a great day.